All right, we appear to be live. Welcome to the You Heard Me podcast episode
1-5.
15, also known as 15. And this is my beautiful wife, Alyssa, if you're tuning in for the first time. And my name is Nick, and I'm the head trainer and owner of Hope Gables Canine. So nice to meet you all. If I've met you already, nice to see you, maybe virtually. So we are going to dive into it, and we have a really good lead-in topic that we're going to get into now, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And the lead-in topic that I want to discuss today, before we get into everybody's questions, are how easily we guilt ourselves in feeling like we aren't enough or not providing enough for our dogs, and how that guilt drives us to do things or drive our dogs into areas that we initially intended to avoid. And so I know that was a lot of words and sentences that probably doesn't make sense until I explain it. But essentially, to give an example, and I'm going to use socialization as one of those examples, or even going to the dog park or whatever it is, right? Let's take an example, right? So, dogs typically, they get used to a certain level of, distraction or, I'll give it up. Well, let me put it this way. There are a lot of dogs that if you don't teach them how to settle, they become energizer bunnies, right? And so what I mean by that is a lot of dogs grow up to form this mold of they always need something to keep their minds going, right? They always need something to satisfy whatever inner emotion they're feeling. And a lot of times, what that does is it guilts us because it makes us feel like we're not giving them enough. So I think that's probably the better way to put it. I know my initial, sort of overview of the topic probably didn't illustrate that, but I think that's the best way to put it. And that's a really good example of how a lot of times when we never teach our dogs the contrast of play and exercise and constantly moving, then you get that Energizer Bunny aspect of your dog. And then that's where the guilt starts coming in, right? And this is probably one of the most common examples of this, of how guilt will actually drive behaviors in our dogs that we initially intended to avoid, okay? Now, basically, what you have to remember is this. Your dog will essentially take as much as you're going to give them, right? There are dogs that you can give them an inch and they'll take a mile, and that applies behaviorally. And how do those behaviors start? A lot of times it's because we feel guilty that our dogs don't have enough freedom. We feel guilty that our dogs don't have enough exercise. We feel guilty that we're not going on enough walks. We feel guilty that we're not giving our dogs enough toys. We feel guilty that we're not being the owner that we feel like our dog deserves. Now, a lot of those emotions are normal because you want to be the best you can be for your dog. So these are very normal emotions. Where it starts going awry, I love that word. Where it starts going awry, I'm trying to expand my dictionary, vocabulary, that would be one of them, is we give too much. And when we start giving too much and we don't moderate what we're giving, that's when you get reactivity. You get dogs that become overwhelmed. You get dogs that need something at all times to behave.
What do you mean by giving too much?
Well, it's in terms of giving too much. So, perfect example, right? When a puppy is a puppy, it's really important to teach the puppy how to behave with levels of freedom, right? So it starts with a crate, and then you can give them, the living room, and then you monitor them in the living room. How is that freedom, having an influence on them and their behavior? And then you give them the house, and then you give them the yard. But it has to be based on their behavior, because there are dogs that you can give all the freedom in the world and they'll be totally fine. They'll never misbehave.
So you're talking about giving freedom.
Well, it's not just freedom. I mean, it's anything, right? Freedom is one example, but it could be exercise and playtime. right? What if playtime is the entire day and how your dog lives their entire day?
Mhm.
Well, what is that expectation now?
Got it.
Well, when
Okay.
I can't play, when I can't exercise, well, exercise should always be given every day, right? We should always strive as owners to exercise our dogs, especially if they're high drive dogs. But I want to focus in on play specifically, because a lot of it doesn't have to just be freedom. It could also be play, right? Where we want to constantly see our dogs moving. And that movement, all right, it becomes an expectation. Well, what happens when you have a busy day? Or what happens when life happens? Or what happens when you can't give that? So you have to be very careful about how you moderate these things that you're giving, because once they become expectations, okay, and let's say you're socializing your dog too much, or you're going to the dog park too much, and what is your dog doing? And we've talked about this on previous podcasts. Your dog is pulling you to the dog park. That's behavior they've gotten away with, number one. Now you open up the gate of the dog park. Dog just bad out of hell, right? And then your dog starts, all that energy. They're just trying to get it out. And a lot of that turns into, well, a lot of dogs, and I'm going to get flack for saying this, but a lot of dogs at dog parks are very rude. They don't have very good social skills. Go to a dog park and just sit outside of it, and I'm sure some of you have. Who's humping who? Who's, growling at who? Who's jumping on who? Who's doing... Now, not all the dogs, but there are always the ones that they shouldn't be there. And it is a lot of owners' guilt that is the reason why they're there, because that is how they feel that their dog gets their energy out. But there are so many other ways that you can go about it. So I think a lot of times we think we're doing the right thing, but then it's creating behaviors that we don't like, but then we don't know why. And because we don't see the connections of all these things. Now, that's not a knock on people that bring their dogs to dog parks. It's because I want you to feel less guilty. You don't have to feel guilty. And when that guilt starts kicking in, that's why a lot of dogs develop bad habits and bad behaviors, because we initially, at some point along the way, felt guilty that we weren't giving enough. So it's not a knock on anybody. It's more of, let's start being aware of how we are teaching and setting expectations for our dogs to follow, and also how we are moderating the things that we're giving them, because it ultimately has to be based on their behavior, right? Exercise is a given, but freedom, okay, is usually given too much too soon. So when a puppy comes into a home, we're going to throw the crate away. We're going to phase that out after maybe a couple weeks. We just want our dog to have the entire house because that's why we got a dog. But did you evaluate if your dog actually could behave with all of that? And then that's where all the behaviors start coming in. The chewing of the molding, nipping constantly, things like that. So, and a lot of that is driven from, we feel guilty seeing our dog sitting still. And that has to be overcome if you want a dog that's well behaved. If your dog cannot sit still, there is a likelihood that they're developing bad habits at some point. I'm not saying that they should be sitting still all day. That's unrealistic, but they need to understand the balance of that. And so when we get a dog into a board and train and they don't know how to sit still, that's where we start, because a lot of those dogs need constantly need something to keep their mind occupied constantly, not just some of the time, all the time. And that's where you start getting bad behaviors. All right. Not all bad behaviors, but certainly a lot of them. Okay. So I think, again, moral of the story, stop feeling guilty. Do the best you can. You already are going to do the best you can because you love your dog, and we all love our dogs. So we're always going to strive to do the best we can. But be careful of how your guilt starts taking over and starts controlling your mind. And then your dog starts, again, you're starting to get all these behaviors, and you're like, I don't see the connection. Well, the connection is, at some point, your dog was given too much of something. And you have to evaluate, what do we have to start moderating more to get the behaviors that we want to see? And that's really how I'm going to stop that, kind of rant, quote unquote. But okay. I think that's a very important topic, because we all tend to feel like at some point in our life, whether it's in a relationship or it's in a relationship with our dogs, relationship with our loved ones, at some point, if you are striving to be the best that you can be, guilt a lot of times infiltrates our minds, and it drives us to do things that, or say things that we didn't intend to in the first place. All right, so I think that's important.
Interesting.
What do we think there?
Very good.
I think it's very relatable for today.
Yeah.
We had a little tit for tat prior to getting on the podcast, but we're doing great, right? Love you.
Sure.
All right, I have my vitamin water today. I'm feeling recharged.
What flavor?
Mm,
Pomegranate?
Yep, blueberry pomegranate. It's the one that 50 Cent came out with years ago, if anybody remembers that. It was like a big thing. I'm a big 50 Cent fan, if anybody is out there is wondering. Okay?
Really?
Yes, really.
Oh,
How do you not know this? Well, I listen to a lot of metal music, and I actually give Alyssa a lot of credit for coming to metal concerts with me. And I think it's really important that you find somebody in life that is willing to suck it up and enjoy the things that you enjoy, and because they love you. And I told Alyssa,
and that's what I do.
And I told Alyssa that I'm not the biggest Taylor Swift fan, but I will certainly go to a Taylor Swift concert.
I mean, I'm not the biggest Taylor Swift fan either.
No, I'm not saying you are, but I would go to a concert.
I just think it's good. She puts on a good performance.
Well,
okay.
Anyway. All right.
Question 1.
Question 1.
Is the e-collar the only way to teach a reliable command?
Honestly, it depends on what you define reliable. Yes, I would say like a large...
when they say come, you come.
Well, I would say a large majority. Okay, a large majority, I would say that yes, because most dogs are going to experience moments where they know the command, even when they were taught the command. Let's say they were taught the command without an e-collar. I do feel strongly that however many reps that you've done teaching your dog a come command, and whatever you're using for the reward is probably not going to match every little distraction in the environment.
Right, like a deer or something.
Right.
The e-collar is the best for that.
I personally feel that way. I really do. I think that all dogs benefit from being e-collar trained. Not all dogs don't need e-collars, but I feel that they all benefit from them. It's a big difference, right? Dogs, do they require training tools? All of them? No. But what do you want to do with your dog? I mean, are you going to be active with your dog? Are you going to go on hikes with your dog? What is your lifestyle with your dog? And if it's going to be, hey, there's going to be a lot of competing motivators where I go with my dog, then e-collar training is very beneficial. If your dog is just going to be hanging out in the yard and they're behaving themselves and you don't plan on taking them anywhere, then maybe you don't need one. It all depends on what your outcome for the training is and how that matches your lifestyle. But I do think that if you are going to be active with your dog, having them e-collar trained is your best bet for reliability, especially when the unpredictable happens. So you can usually predict things around your home for the most part, but out in the real world, that's really where the training tools come into play. Yeah.
Yes, I do agree.
Great.
What would you suggest for a high drive dog who is great in obedience, but can oftentimes find it hard to settle? I have a 2-year-old German Shepherd who is smart as hell, but can be a terror if not ran daily to the point of exhaustion.
Oh, we just talked about that. So I'm not going to, I think the lead-in topic answered a lot of that. High drive dogs, and we deal with a lot of them. German Shepherds, Huskies, German Shorthair Pointers are very high drive, Dobermans, any working dog. Okay. I feel like the owners that we have dealt with in the past that have high drive dogs feel the most guilt. Okay. And that's sort of why I chose that as the lead-in topic, because we do deal with a lot of high drive dogs. And the reason why I feel like guilt starts infiltrating our minds when we own a dog like that is because on the other side of the coin, we are being told, whether we're scrolling online or, we're a part of a group of people that own these dogs, and you're seeing that some of those owners are sitting outside all day with their dogs. Okay, but here's the thing. who knows what their lifestyle's like? Who knows if are they retired? Do they work from home? Who knows, right? So again, we should always strive to do the best that we can for our dogs. And I've talked about getting a dog that matches your lifestyle in the past. So I think that's really where it starts, is like, what is your lifestyle and what breed of dog is going to match that? But look, people don't always have the information right right at their fingertips. And so stuff happens. Okay. So what are you going to get rid of your dog? No. So you're just you're going to figure it out. Okay. You're going to hire people to help you, us being one of them, of course, and people that can come and help care for your dog when you're not around. And so you always figure it out, but you certainly do not want to feel guilty, because that guilt I've seen drive dogs into places where they shouldn't be and then develop behavior issues like reactivity. Okay. Daycare, perfect example. Daycare is like a dog park indoors. All right. Now, I'm sure there are daycares out there that are structured. In fact, I follow a few of them on Instagram. I think they do a phenomenal job. But most daycares and most dog parks, a lot of times that's where reactivity develops, because either the dog was so overwhelmed at one point or got attacked, or nobody advocated for the dog's space, and you don't know what's going on when you're not around in those environments. A lot of times that's where reactivity comes from. But again, it starts with us feeling like we're not giving enough. And so, my best piece of advice is, all right, do the best you can. Hire people that will either come to your house, you can watch them on the camera playing with your dog in the backyard, lower the risk, and still do the things that you should do anyway. And I think that's important. Yep.
Very good.
Thanks.
My dog snapped for the first time at my friend's dog, and they've always gotten along in the past and have played without any issues. I'm puzzled as to why now. It almost seemed to come out of nowhere.
Yeah, so it almost always seems to come out of nowhere. So there are things and signs that our dogs exhibit that I agree are very hard to pick up as somebody that hasn't been trained on body language and dog behavior and things like that, right? So it is highly likely that even though your dogs got along, somewhere along the way, and I don't know how long these dogs have been friends for, it could be a couple of weeks, it could be more, it could be less. Likely, somewhere along the way, there was something occurred in their relationship, because dogs also have relationships, obviously, with each other that have to have the same values: respect, trust, okay, right? All the things that any relationship, even with humans, have to be the healthiest relationship. Likely one of those elements got violated at one point in time, all right? It could have been when they were playing. Something happened or something occurred, or something came into the environment, okay, that changed the vibe of maybe historically of what it was like playing together. I don't know if jealousy was part of it. Maybe jealousy got in the way somewhere here, and maybe they, a lot of times we'll have a call like this, and like, favorite toy got put in the middle of the dogs all of a sudden, or the favorite person got put in the middle all of a sudden, and there was some jealousy there, and then possessive behavior came into play. Maybe that didn't come into play in the past, and I'm speculating because I don't have enough information, but these are all things to evaluate, because dogs just don't snap for no reason. And so there's always a reason. Yeah.
Okay. What is your opinion on the plastic prong collars?
I don't like them. I'll explain why. I don't like them.
I don't think I've ever seen them.
Well, they look like I've seen them before. They look like triangles. It's like a plastic triangle. Okay, and it's like in a. It almost looks like I'm trying to think of a similar. Well, it's plastic. It's basically plastic triangles. Okay, they do this right. It's in a circle. If it's the one that this person's referencing, I don't like them for this reason. Okay, a lot of times but manufacturers will try to make something look nicer because to encourage people to buy it, but what they don't tell you is that you're losing all the effectiveness of the reason why prong collars exist. So no, I don't like the plastic prong collars, because it's there, they're put there to make you think it is somehow nicer or kinder, okay, But if you, yes, do the metal prong collars look the prettiest? No. Are they the most effective to communicate with your dog? Yes, because they're manufactured that way. That's why they've been around forever. So I also think this is an important topic to discuss too, is we have to stop judging things based on looks, okay? The prong collar is one of the most effective training tools if you know how to teach it properly. Going out and getting a plastic prong collar, which has about 20% of the effectivity of metal prong collar, just because it looks nicer.
I don't even think it's about looks.
It is.
People,
100%.
It's that plus people aren't educated on it.
Well, no, I agree with that, but I also think it's very much about looks, because if it looks nicer, the manufacturer knows that you might potentially buy it over a metal prong collar. So it is all about looks. It's all about emotions and perception.
Right, but if you aren't educated in the fact that it doesn't work, and that too.
Yes, I agree. I also agree, though, that if the metal prong collars looked like those and they were just yeah, I guess I see what you're saying. I'm following you. I'm following you. Yeah, I agree. So
it's both.
It is both. All right. So high five. Okay. This is why we make a good team. So yes, absolutely. And that's why I don't like them. And I don't like training tools that are sort of put there to like the gentle leader and the easy walk harness. And these are all marketing terms. All right. Don't think that you're not being marketed to. Herm Springer prong collar is not marketing to you. There's nothing in the name that is trying to emotionally manipulate you or encourage you to buy it. All right. But it is, funnily enough, the most effective walking tool, period. Why does Herm Springer not have to market themselves? Because they've proven time and time again that that is the case if you know how to properly teach it. And just like Alyssa said, you have to be educated on that. You have to hire somebody to show you. And we've changed so many people's belief systems and minds when we've shown them to get past, or when we've gotten them past the look of it, and we've shown their dog confident on it. I mean, we've done that hundreds and hundreds sometimes. I've lost count. Right? Yes, technique is important, but getting past the looks of something and reading between the lines and being aware that you might be being manipulated by the look of something or the marketing of something, especially in the dog world, is extremely important skill if you want to, grow in your training knowledge, and especially if you're struggling with a dog that has a behavior issue. Even more important, you have to develop the skill of, does this work? Let me find out if it works. Let me find out for myself if it works. Let me hire somebody to guide me so that I can find that out effectively and efficiently. And if you aren't willing to go through that, to do that, then I don't blame people for judging things that way. But it is something where you have to fully open your mind and jump in head first, especially if you think you've tried everything. Boy, I would open, if you feel like you've tried everything to solve your dog's behavior, there's probably some stuff around that you might have been made aware of or have been recommended that you haven't tried because you're sort of nervous about how your dog might take to it. And so, if you feel like you've tried everything, likely there are many things that you have not. And that's where we come in, is to help educate and explain why this is necessary at the point you are in your training journey. So, yeah.
Saw your last episode on aggression. Have a similar case. It's nonstop management to keep him out of trouble, but we do the best we can. It does take a strong-minded owner, though, and even with us, it's hard some days.
Yeah, I know that wasn't a question, but I absolutely, I feel for you, and keep it up. You're doing an amazing job. Owning a dog that is a bite risk is a daily job. It is, and it's and for those of you that are putting in the work, which those dogs can be a lot of work, then you should be patting yourself on the back, because it's not easy. And a lot of people don't understand your struggle, and they don't understand how emotionally draining it is to have to be on top of your dog 24/7 like that. But I mean, I can't,
You can relate.
we can relate because we have those dogs here, so we know what it's like.
Mhm.
And so I say to you, keep up the good work. You're doing everything that you should be doing, and if you need any help, obviously reach out to us. So, yep.
Um, what happened to streaming on Instagram? We'll watch anywhere, but Instagram seemed like a good bet. Just curious.
Yeah, so basically what happened is well, first of all, I'm not a tech. I know enough about technology.
Yeah, I mean, you're pretty good.
I mean, I was able to figure all this
Yeah.
out, but when we start getting into streaming multiple platforms, I mean, I don't know a lot of even the most famous podcasters. I don't know that are streaming live on multiple platforms. I mean, it's a very complex
Mhm.
thing, and we found that out the hard way. We tried it. It went okay, but I wasn't happy with the quality of the stream. And I would much rather have a high quality stream on one platform than lower quality on multiple platforms. So we decided to just go back to YouTube. Most of the most popular podcasts are YouTube hosted.
Mhm.
And so we're just going where, where the traffic is. At some point, hopefully we figure out the Instagram piece of it. But for right now, we're just going to revert back to YouTube.
Alrighty.
Yep.
Should I be picking up my puppy at 6 months old? He'll squirm and sometimes nip, which he never used to do before.
No. And I'm going to explain why, because I always like to. How old? 6 months?
6 months.
Yeah. So, and I don't know how big your dog is. I don't know if it's a smaller dog. It doesn't really matter. So
Well, 6 months.
big, not how old. Big.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, I guess
Well,
Bernese
tell me.
Mountain Dog at 6 months
Tell me.
could be 60 pounds.
Thank you. All right. So anyway, I lost my train of thought. Oh, so your dog is maturing and they are becoming more independent. And just like a kid that's growing older, right? At some point, it's time to stop picking your dog up. Your dog is going through a lot of emotional, hormonal changes, etc. Picking them up is probably the last thing I would do. Now, I've definitely heard in the past of dogs getting picked up, and as they mature and get older and bigger, they get more wiggly, they act aggressively, they start snapping at you, and they're basically communicating like, hey, I don't want to be picked up. And those are the times to really respect what your dog is saying. Now, if your dog needs to be picked up, okay, then the one time you do it, they're probably not going to hold it against you, like if it's a life or death situation. But if you're picking them up every day for no real reason and they don't want to be picked up, they're going to hold that one time that you really need to pick them up probably against you. Okay, so I would stop picking your dog up unless there's a reason for doing so. So, but if you're just picking them up,
just to
excuse me,
coddle
to
them,
like,
which you shouldn't really be doing anyway, right?
well, no, I mean, you can show affection to your dog, but picking them up is one of those things where, especially for dogs that have behavior issues, which we talk about a lot,
Yeah.
is you
That's
don't
what
want
I'm
them to get dependent on that. So yes, good point. Yes.
Okay. Why do people insist on using flexi leads with the worst behaved dogs? Well, first, can you explain what a flexi lead is?
Well, yeah, I
first?
mean, the flexi lead is the it's
the one
plastic,
that goes
yeah.
out.
It's a plastic handle and like right, and then you can lock it.
Got it.
And a lot of people will lock it, right? And then
my parents use that.
That lock is not it's if you have a dog that pulls, that lock is like a little piece of plastic that they've been known to break over and over again. And dogs have gotten attacked from dogs on flexi leads because the owner thinks they have the control, and then all of a sudden 10 more feet go out.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no, what do I do? It's like, I can't reel you back in because now you're mauling another dog or something like that. So
I feel like people basically use those just to like, I don't know, let their dog be able to like go farther into a place that they don't want to go into.
Well, I think Alyssa brings up a good point. There are use cases for them. I know trainers that use flexi leads for recall because they can easily like have it go out and have them come back to them. Yeah, certainly. But for like a day-to-day walking,
Yes.
well, let me rephrase. For a day-to-day, if your dog is misbehaving on their walks already, flexi lead should be the last thing in your training toolbox. If your dog is behaved, then yeah, sure, use a flexi lead because there's no real risk there. But if your dog is a risk, or they have aggressive tendencies, or they pull really hard, or whatever it might be, get rid of the flexi lead. It all just depends on your dog's behavior.
I feel like my parents use them because when they take their dog for a walk, they go like up to the woods, and so that they don't have to go into the woods, it lets their
but
dog
they're
go
very
to the
well,
bathroom.
they're very well behaved. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like Alyssa's proving my point. So yeah,
Yes, check.
check. Okay, great. What else we got?
Okay, this is the last question.
Okay.
Any advice for starting the place command for the first time?
Yeah. So, well, the first thing is, I'm assuming you have a raised pet cot. You want to guide your dog on
If you
top.
don't get one.
If you don't get one, there's many different brands on
And
Amazon.
do you want to explain why you need?
Are you going to keep interjecting here? Or am I going to
Well,
finish
like if someone doesn't know what that means or why they would need it for place, other than just like a lot of questions, I feel like people always ask, well, why can't I just use their bed? It's not effective.
Because the clearer the boundary, the better the behavior.
Okay, there you go. See, you answered it so quickly.
All
Okay, now you can
right.
keep going.
Yay. Okay. So yes, raised pet cot, clear the boundary, the better outcome, or the better the reliability of the place command itself. And then you also want to guide your dog on top, establish a marker word. I don't know if I would work on duration right away. I would just work on getting them on there, mark, reward, release. Okay, so start incorporating a release word so that eventually you can work on duration. So figure out what you want that release word to be. Do you want it to be break? Some of our clients use okay, free, whatever it is. You're basically just conditioning right now. You're just like, okay, get your dog familiar with the place command. I would probably do completely nonverbal first and just reward them for going on top. And then, over time, once that behavior, your dog is jumping on top of there, whether you're free shaping or you're using leash pressure or you're luring, just get them used to going on top of the board. Mark, reward, release. Mark, reward, release. Do that over and over again. Once your dog is getting with the flow of that, then give it a word, place, etc. And then place, break, right? And then you can start working on duration using a good marker. Dog goes, good, reward. Now they have to stay until you release them. So that's obviously a lot of training that I explained in a 30-second explanation. But just start with getting them to go on and marking and rewarding, and that's where I would start. And then you can kind of go on from there.
It really helps with letting your dog settle too.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Our dogs, when we're done for the day working and we're hanging out in the living room, our one dog, Ash, just wants to play.
Yeah.
And he's looking at us and staring at us, and we'll play with him. And then, Layla naturally kind of just goes and lays down, and he's like, play.
Well, Layla
we'll,
also went through training at a very young age.
I was going to say that.
Yes, at 6 months of age.
So
yes.
she kind of knows and understands to just know how to relax. And he, we'll just tell him to go to his place, and he'll like calm and settle down.
Well, that's the thing. So Layla had training very young, and Ash's training came in much later in life. So Ash definitely, they just have different personalities. Just like any 2-dog, 3-dog, 4-dog household, whatever. You have dogs that are more natural to settle on their own, and then you have dogs that you have to reinforce that settling more. And so Ash definitely falls in that category. Layla doesn't. And Alyssa brings up a good point, is that, your dogs don't have to be the exact same. And the beauty of your dogs are that they are different. That's why we get multiple dogs. How you reinforce things amongst your dogs are going to differ. And we see that with our dogs. And that should be no different in any other household. Some dogs you're going to have to work harder. Some dogs you don't have to work as hard.
Right.
Or, whatever, vice versa. So I think Alyssa brings up a good point
Thank you.
that. And And that's why you're here.
Yes.
That's why you're here, because you are.
I make lots of good points.
Yes, that's right. You do. And you're my lovely wife, and I appreciate you. Okay? I appreciate you. All right. So, what's anybody in the chat box? Anybody have any questions? As a reminder, you do have to be logged in to YouTube to post in the chat. And so, if you have any questions, we will give it another moment or two. We'll wait for questions. Also, obviously, you can submit questions during the week. We do post on our Instagram stories quite a bit. And so, a lot of the questions we just went through were submitted earlier, and we've been getting questions in the chat too as well, which is great. So
I can't believe this is the 15th episode.
15 weeks. That's wow, over 3 months. Crazy. Right?
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
When you put it that way, yeah.
Yeah, because it
Can't
was
believe we've been doing that.
it was cold, I think, when we did the first couple podcasts, because we didn't have the AC, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of cold. It was still well. Let's see. 3 months ago was what? What are we in June? Mid-June? So
March? Did we start March?
April, May. Oh yeah, so we did start in March. Well, it's still cold in March.
No,
Yeah.
maybe we started in April.
Yeah, maybe. Well, anyway, all right. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Again, You Heard Me podcast. This is episode 15, coming to you every Thursday live on YouTube
At 8 p.m.
at 8 p.m. Thank you. Have a great night and have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.